Yeah, yeah. Better than
If
nothing,
you
right?
are struggling with managing your projects, you're probably like, I keep having costs overrun, or it could even be that you find that you're just not making any money on your projects, various projects. You want to listen in. I do have Yusuf this morning with me, this afternoon, depending on where you're joining in and the time. You might be watching the replay. And he is a very experienced project manager. He's managed projects with the millions of dollars, complex scopes, and they've been successful. And ultimately, you want your projects to be successful. So, Yusuf, thank you so much for coming on and be willing to share, with our listeners and all. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Krishan. And we've got to know each other, from Clubhouse, which is where, we've got a good fan base of construction people within the construction sector. There's loads of people that we've met over the past, I've been running the Clubhouse group, everything in construction, for about 9 months now, and we've met tremendous amount of people, and it's great to be able to help people because I'm really passionate about construction, as you are. And the importance we know is cash. Cash is really, really important when it comes to construction, and specifically when it's managing your projects and making sure you have good cash flow. And we had a discussion last night on Clubhouse. Every Thursday we have a night, and a lot of people talking about the downturn and the importance,
Yes.
that you have to set yourself up not just for the good times, but when the good times, you need to make sure that you're set up as well for the down, for the times that it's quiet. Winter's coming along. We're just after COVID. In Canada, construction starts to slow down during the winter just because it's difficult. A lot of projects, if they haven't got off the ground, everyone's scrambling now. If they haven't got off the ground now, they're trying to excavate because the ground is going to freeze before the end of the year. Get your foundations in, get them covered. So it's really, really important that we set up a solid structure for construction projects across the board. And this is where we've met, on the finances. I think a lot of people on the finances have a lot of difficulty as well, just forecasting. And it's always what everyone says. If you're not analyzing it and you're not writing it down, you can't measure it. So you have to be able to write it down. You have to have a visual. I've done so much research and learning, and all the top CEOs, they're always looking at the cash position on all,
Yeah.
and in businesses. And I'm like, it's as important in a construction project to also know your position. You can't just blind managing projects and then think, oh yeah, every 6 months I'll look at my cash position, or every month. You should be looking at it on a weekly basis to understand where you're at. And I know it's a lot to say, and there's a lot, because a lot of these things, in construction, the difficulty is you get dragged to site. We all know that we get dragged to site. It's too busy. Things start happening at site. We start getting dragged to site, and other things come up. And I know you've disappeared on the screen, so I'm not sure if I've gone too, but we'll just keep on going. So
Yes, I can hear you still.
the most important thing is to set up a solid structure and conceptual stages.
Okay, yes. So one of the things I want us to talk about, because I'm a list person, I like approaching everything. I have lots of lists, to keep me focused. So what would you say is that must do starting point to really set up your project to be successful? And this will apply if you're having a small project, a few $1,000s, 100,000s versus millions. What is that key first step that you really should be doing when you're setting up your project?
So I think that one of the first steps is breaking the project down. It's the most important thing, to break a project down into small bite sizes. And
Oh,
that,
I think I'm getting a feedback. I'm not sure if it's on your side.
I know it was a bit unsteady. Okay.
No, it's coming muffled. I'm not sure. It might be,
Is that,
we have so many struggles with technology
I
these
know,
days.
like, hey, well, we'll just keep it there. The
That's
best thing
better.
to
We
do,
got we
yeah,
got you back.
that's
Yeah.
right. The best thing is to keep on going, and then we can sort it out. I mean, it'll come out with the wash later. So really, the most, it's like everything. You just keep going. You get
Yeah.
the, you know, and in Clubhouse, you get the bar of death, and you're like, oh, nobody can hear me. I can't do anything. And then everybody's like, no, you're fine. Don't worry. So just keep on rambling. So really setting up the project from the start is really, really important. And it's breaking the project down into bite sizes and then quantifying those bite sizes. So the first thing is like your work breakdown structure. So you look at your schedule. Well, even prior to that is understand your scope. The most important thing is understand your scope. You don't understand your scope, you need to understand your scope and quantify your scope monetary. Because if changes come, and when changes come, and we all know that they do come, then you need to be able to monitor those and find out where you're veering away. So the first thing is really set up your scope, understand what your scope is. And then once you understand your scope, start breaking the work packages down. Once you break the work packages down, you have a schedule, and you also have a cost element to those. And for people like you, the most important thing is understanding that line item and the cost item. And again, it comes down to understanding where the changes are, where the scope creep is, how things are moving on that one line item. And I've been involved with projects where they've had, $100 million projects, and I've had like 10 line items in the cost breakdown structure. And for people like you that are looking at the cash flow, it makes it really, really difficult because it hasn't been broken down enough. So you can't monitor the different elements. Somebody once, I learned what somebody, it's a lot of the smaller organizations, what they do is they receive an invoice and they pay an invoice. Somebody was telling me once that the best thing to do, and it makes sense because in larger organizations they do it, is set up a purchase order for every contractor with the contract in. And then what you do is you invoice against that PO. So if you know that PO is set up with 5 or 6 line items within that PO, when the invoices come in, it's really easy to check against that PO because you've set it up prior, rather than an invoice coming in and then you're like scrambling to try and work out, do I pay this invoice? Is it warranted? Where's the backup information? All this kind of stuff. So at the beginning, it's really, really important to me when an invoice comes in, what that invoice is being booked to. And it helps again with schedule. And if you code everything, it's like, you know that when you set up a project monetarily, or even a business, you're looking at the different line items. Accountants, what they do is they're taking elements of that business and they're charging them to certain activities. It's the same thing within a project. And it's so important that you set it up from the start to be able to monitor it as you're going through the project.
Yeah, thanks for that, because I have seen, cost overrun, scope creep, and there's so many ways to handle that, but that is definitely something to be on the lookout for, and you're not going to know it that easily unless you're managing your projects effectively, or you have that project manager who is really on top of all these things, and just be so aware of everything. So you've set up you're in the process of setting up your project. As you go through the project, sometimes there's so many changes, right? And sometimes it's not only scope creep, it could be coming outside of the industry, the rules change, so many, economic changes do take place. So what have you found that does work to really manage when there cost overruns? Like, what are some of the main reasons that there are all these variances, cost overruns, changes that as you go into your project, you can look out for? Like, you can be so keen that, okay, I don't want this to miss me. I need to look out for this. What are some of the things you found that, as contractors, those in the construction world, you need to be on the lookout for, because these can easily lead to your project being overrun or just not profitable too?
So that, for me, that's where experience comes in. A lot of it comes with experience. I know I have 20 years experience in the construction industry. When I set up a project, I know already where the pinch points are. We know interfaces are problems. We know, and anybody with experience and has done a few projects and the fingers been burnt a few times, you know where your problems are going to come. And so right at the start, you're starting to do a risk review. And so you start to look at where these things potentially can happen. And there's so many things in this day and age, in the past 2 years specifically, so many things have caught us off guard. You know, you've had COVID where things have started to close down. Now you've got supply chain issues where people just can't get material for various reasons. Material stuck in ports, factories don't have raw materials to make things. Now we have in BC floods. We were having a chat yesterday, as I said, and BC now has problems with power, can't get, you know, that the materials running out, shops are clear. So some things you can't predict everything, but with experience, you know how to start putting a backup plan in place, you know, just in case these things happen. So I know, like with materials, problems with materials. So one of the things is, can I use alternative materials? You know, what happens if I go to my architect and say, by the way, you specified this, I can't get it. Is there a backup? Can we use something else? And you see that a lot where there's a lot of material, especially during the pandemic when lumber prices started to go up drastically. People started to think, oh, well, do I need to use lumber? Can I use steel? Can I use something else? Is there some other material that I can use? And that's, you know, trying to govern outside a lot of these issues, you know, external to the project is difficult because you can't always quantify them. You don't know when they're going to come. But within the project, as long as, you know, at the early stages in the project, if you set up your risk register, which is basically a list, and this is, you know, going back to the scope of the project, you look at your risk, your key risks. So we know potentially could be lockdowns now when you're setting up your projects, potential lockdowns, potential material shortages, potential labor shortages. How do I deal with this? And a lot of it comes down to good communication with the owner. So I work with a lot of developers in the real estate industry and a lot of project owners, and they're aware of these things. A lot of these people, they're not just some of the people I'm working with, they have their own factories. They're already making stuff. They understand steel's gone up. They understand that the shortages of material. They know that. I think the key is communication, and say, look, you know, we're going to build a building. We're extending a manufacturing plant. Okay. Do you know steel's gone up? Yes, steel's gone up. Okay. What we'll do is we'll keep this line item as a cost, as a fixed cost on this part of the project. If something changes later on, be mindful. And it's about these, you know, assumptions. One of the key things is, well, when you set up a project, is to have the assumptions down, because it's important to understand that assumptions are just as important as reality. And if things change along the way, then at least you have it there to say, look, you know, when we set this project up, we knew we had to go permitting. Permitting could take 6 to 12 months. Steel prices could go up, they could go down. Let's leave that on the table. We park it here. We have a budgetary figure. We know where it is. If something changes along the way, we'll come back and address it, and we'll have an open conversation. And most owners that I've dealt with are reasonable. They want the projects to finish. It costs them money if the project is delayed. It costs them more money. I speak to so many owners that are in difficulty because their project is stalled, and for various reasons, and it's costing them a lot of money. And they're like, I would have paid the extra money and the extra cost to expedite that bit of material or change it or do something, because now my project is 5 months delayed and it's costing me a lot more. And you've got to think, a lot of the times these projects, there is a commitment date. Somebody says it's going to be ready at the end of December and the project hasn't been closed at the end of December. There could be contracts that are already signed for December. And if you all of a sudden say 6 months down the line, my project isn't going to be ready, you can lose those contracts, which is a lot of money. So the first thing is communication. And the second thing is written documentation. So when things and changes are happening, the first thing I do is I write a little email, say, right, you know, by the way, we know that, we knew that this could potentially be an issue, or it's a surprise. We didn't know about it, but I'm letting you know that there's a potential issue here. I haven't quantified it. I don't have any costs for it. I'm just putting up, as I call, a red flag to say, by the way, this issue is coming. And then let's work it out. I'm not trying to ding the owner. And this is, it's a collaboration, especially now. I find it's a lot more it's a lot more open to working as a collaboration with owners and developers, especially where I come from, rather than it's the owner, it's the engineer, it's the project manager. It's a team effort. And managing these projects, especially from a schedule and cost perspective, is very key to have open dialogue and a collaborative approach with the owners, and looking for other methods. It's not always just as one method fits all. And going back, it's quantifying it at the beginning, it's then communication during the project, and then trying to work out what the best method is, and documenting it. And then and the last thing is getting approval. So the worst thing is that happens is that somebody comes to site and says, oh, I don't like this color of the wall, I don't like that, or change it. And there's so many times this happens and nobody documents it, and you realize that the person that actually made the request had nothing to do with the project, or has no, there's no, they don't have any say. There could be just, you know, it could be a stakeholder, but not a key stakeholder, that if something, you know, for them to be able to have the financial authority to be able to make that change. So sometimes when you get changes, the key is as well is to make sure that it's a warranted change, which is why I always say communication is so important, and also making sure that that change is a valid change, and basically the owner, it's a request, because there's so many times, I'm sure that when you go on projects, there's these additional costs, and when you go down to these additional costs and you try and work out like who requested these, you realize that the person that had authority of the project didn't even want them to begin with. And again, it's making them understand that, you know, sometimes moving a doorway isn't just as simple as cutting into the drywall and moving a doorway. There's a lot more costs. There's a lot more too. You know, there's a say, just in the middle, there was a saying that it's easier to erase it on a drawing than it is to smash it down at the site. And so that's, again, at the beginning, early stages of a project. That's why it's so key to spend time at the early stages of a project to do the proper planning. Spend a bit extra time to do the planning, and then later on, you'll save yourself a lot of money.
Yeah, and that does make sense, because it's, you know, realizing the importance of connecting with all the other persons that are involved on the project. I really like that you highlighted that, because the engineer, the designer, the architect, they don't operate in isolation. It's all going to be impacting each other. It's like the body, right? All the body parts impact each other. So in the same way, that is such an important component of managing the project, realizing that all the parties that are involved, all the stakeholders need to be, you know, aware of what the other is doing, so that you don't have these chaos and, you know, lots of rework after as well. So the last thing I want to touch on is, some persons will like, you know, I don't need a project manager, I can do this on my own. What do you say to them? Because we do have some persons like that.
So just quick, I know we're running out of time, but just quickly before, you have to understand that engineers, owners, everyone's got a different focus, and it actually comes into the question that you're asking. A lot of so I get that all the time. It's like, I was sat with the developer, and he says, a project manager is another cost for me. Why do I need it? So the thing, but they answer their own question at the same time. First of all, majority of real estate developers and owners, they're busy. They have other things. They don't want to worry about the project. So what you need is, you need somebody that's focused on the project, that understands the project and is coordinating. I always say it's the choir master, right? The project owner is the choir master, because everybody's got their own, everyone's doing their own little thing. Who brings it all together?
I like that.
And the owner doesn't have the time to do that. And a lot of times the owner doesn't have the knowledge. And I work with a lot of developers now that don't want to have that knowledge. They haven't got 20 years of experience. And it's amazing, because I always thought, oh, everyone wants to know everything. No, I sit with a developer and he goes, I don't know how to scan. I've got somebody, an assistant here, that's going to scan my stuff for me, because I don't want to learn to scan. And it's the same kind of thing when it comes to construction. I sit with the developer. He says, I want to sleep at night. I want to know that somebody's managing my project, somebody's running around, somebody's checking on everything. And the owners don't have that. And I always say, a good project manager pays for themselves within the first 3 months. The amount of projects I've been on that save 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 in the first few months just in design, they pay for themselves. And it's the same thing. And I'm sure that when people come to you and they say, oh, why do I need an accountant? Why do I need a bookkeeper? Why do I need somebody that looks? Why? If you were experienced enough, you would have good cash flow. You'd be able to deal, but you don't. You don't have the
Exactly.
time. You don't. As a business owner, I know I don't have that knowledge. I need somebody that's an experience. So it's the same thing. So a lot of people say, oh, it's an extra overhead for me. It's an extra overhead, and it's all okay until you realize that your project's 6 months delayed, and you've spent double the amount of money because you didn't have somebody on the ball all the time. And this is what you see time and time again. I see a lot of smaller developers going into projects. It's really exciting. The projects, I love, construction projects, building something, designing something. It's great. It's that's passionate. But it's so easy if you don't have the right systems in place for it to go off track. And then you're really starting to lose money. And that's why construction gets a lot of bad reputation, because there's a lot of people, and they just don't set the project up. Construction projects are complicated and they are difficult, but it's like anything in life. If you set up the right procedure and you follow the right procedure, you're going to succeed.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Yusuf.
You're welcome.
I really do appreciate you coming on. Yes. And if persons want to reach out to you, where's the best? I know you'll be putting your contact in the comments as well, but just for those who just want to hear it, what's the best way for persons to reach out to you?
So I'm in Canada, so you can reach out to me. My company's EPC Solutions. So my email is Yosef at EPC Solutions. So YOSEF at epcsolutions.ca. LinkedIn, you can just find me on LinkedIn, Yosef Dominitz. I check my LinkedIn often, and just follow me. And I've got there's plenty of things that I'm doing within the construction industry. There's a lot of we're trying to we know that there's a huge shortage of staff within the construction industry, and I'm working with a partner in New York. And there's a lot of, we're trying to bring a lot of women into construction, and also a lot of younger blood in construction, and just giving them time and effort. And we've started to work mentoring. So there's a whole other side, and we have a whole club, everything as I said, on Clubhouse, there's everything in construction as well. We have a website, everythinginconstruction.com, that you can find. And we're providing classes, we're providing mentorship to help people excel within the construction industry. So there's loads going on. This day and age, computers, IT, the world is your oyster, as they say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Yusuf.
You're welcome.
So thanks for tuning in, guys. Do remember to share this broadcast. And if you do have any questions, you can reach out to Yusuf directly, or you can pop them in the comments as well. Do remember to share this broadcast so that others can be aware of these steps, these strategies to really save on those project costs, and of course have projects that are successful.
Exactly.
So we will be signing off now. So until next time, bye guys.
Thank you very much, and have a lovely weekend.
You too, Yusuf. Thank you.